H.R. 40, also known as the Commission to Study and Develop Proposals to Correct Misclassification and Reclaim Identity for Descendants of Enslaved Peoples Act, has one primary mission: to correct the historical injustices stemming from slavery and misclassification. The bill aims to do this through reparations, federal recognition, and the reclamation of identity, especially for African Americans with indigenous ancestry, who were wrongly classified under pseudo-scientific racial laws. Why is H.R. 40 needed today? There are two main reasons. First, the institution of slavery and post-emancipation policies not only economically oppressed African Americans but also erased complex cultural identities, including indigenous heritage. The result? Millions were classified as simply Black, denying them access to resources, land rights, and cultural sovereignty given to other indigenous groups. Second, genealogical records were systematically destroyed, manipulated, or inaccurately recorded, making it nearly impossible for descendants of enslaved people to trace their heritage and claim their rightful lineage. This bill seeks to acknowledge that many African Americans have indigenous roots and deserve the option to reclaim those identities officially. Examples from around the world, such as Native Hawaiians and Aboriginal Australians, demonstrate the importance of reclaiming identity for justice. H.R. 40 proposes a similar path for African Americans with indigenous roots. This new H.R. 40 bill establishes a commission tasked with studying how to correct racial misclassification, provide genealogical assistance, and make reparations recommendations. Specifically, this commission will look at misclassification in historical records, tracing genealogical ties to indigenous heritage, and proposing options for federal recognition as Aboriginal Americans. One of the most important aspects of this bill is that it doesn't just propose financial reparations. It advocates for federal recognition and sovereignty for descendants of enslaved peoples with indigenous ties, a model based on governance structures of Native Hawaiian and Native American nations. This emphasis on both reparations and recognition acknowledges that reclaiming identity and cultural heritage is as important as financial compensation. Through this updated bill, the United States is asked to recognize that identity is multifaceted, often erased by historical misclassification, and should be restored with dignity and recognition. Chapter 4: The Role of Historical Figures and Pseudoscience. Two key figures that this bill mentions are Walter Plecker and Alice Hrdlicka. These men were instrumental in enforcing policies and pseudoscientific racial hierarchies that stripped African Americans of their indigenous identity. Walter Plecker, as head of Virginia's Bureau of Vital Statistics, reclassified anyone with African or indigenous ancestry as colored, erasing indigenous identities under the so-called one-drop rule. Similarly, Alice Hrdlicka, often called the father of American anthropology, promoted eugenics-based racial typologies that pathologized non-white groups. Their work solidified discriminatory racial classifications that erased complex identities and justified racial hierarchies. This bill calls for a reckoning with this history. By revisiting and correcting these classifications, H.R. 40 seeks to undo the damage caused by these oppressive policies. Chapter 5: The Commission's Duties and Objectives. The commission created by H.R. 40 will be tasked with several key objectives. Investigating racial classification systems. The commission will research how racial classification, like Plecker's policies, systematically erased indigenous heritage, which this bill seeks to restore. Providing genealogical assistance. Many descendants of enslaved people have struggled to trace their heritage due to destroyed or altered records. The commission will assist in recovering these records and use modern technologies such as DNA testing to reconnect individuals with their heritage. Recommending reparations and recognition. Beyond financial reparations, the bill aims to propose forms of recognition like land rights, educational initiatives, and cultural preservation programs. These are intended to not only address economic disparities, but to restore a sense of identity and cultural pride. Proposing sovereignty. Models. One of the bill's most groundbreaking aspects is the proposed framework for sovereignty, modeled on Native Hawaiian and Native American governance. This framework could pave the way for descendants of enslaved people with indigenous ancestry to reclaim rights, access funding, and establish self-governing institutions. Chapter 6: The Legacy of Slavery and Continued Impact. H.R. 40 also addresses the continued impact of slavery and its aftermath. Even after the Civil War, African Americans faced discriminatory practices like Jim Crow laws, redlining, and mass incarceration, all of which continue to affect the economic, social, and health outcomes of African American communities today. This bill takes a comprehensive approach, examining both historical and modern-day impacts of these systems and proposing long-term solutions for racial healing. Reparations aren't only about financial compensation. They're about restoring communities, rebuilding trust, and recognizing the deep, lasting effects of slavery and systemic discrimination. Chapter 7: The Road Ahead and Hopes for H.R. 40. H.R. 40 provides a path forward, not only for financial justice, but for cultural recognition and healing. By proposing a commission to investigate the deep-rooted impacts of misclassification and racial discrimination, this bill opens a new chapter in the fight for reparations and justice. It acknowledges the rich, complex identities of African Americans and seeks to restore dignity to those who were misclassified and disenfranchised. The updated H.R. 40 bill is a call to recognize the interconnected struggles of identity, justice, and sovereignty. It's a powerful step toward acknowledging and repairing the past for a better, more inclusive future. Thank you for joining us in exploring the updated H.R. 40 bill. The road to justice is long, but by reclaiming identity and addressing historical wrongs, we can move toward a more equitable future. For more information, visit link to resources on H.R. 40.